My name is Larry Felton. I'm from the Melville R9 School District, and I want to tell you I'm very proud and very humbled to get to serve as your president for this year. I can promise you that every time I have a chance to talk about public education, I'll be speaking for the 400 districts and the 2,800 school board members that I represent. I'm here because my school board friends and colleagues talked me into this. They urged me to consider being an officer. I'm also here because I've been able to work with a group of people that are truly trustworthy, friendly, unselfish, and committed to public education. I'd like to recognize a few of them. I'm going to do the thank yous first and do the speech second. First person I'd like to thank is Vic Lenz, a past president, a friend, and a mentor. If you ever ask Vic Lenz, hey, I'd like to get involved, he'll get you involved. That's why I'm here. I want to thank the past presidents who have set shining examples of how to serve. Jerry Lee, Dave Wright, Peggy Taylor, Robin Krause, Sharon Horbeck. I want to thank 4 board members, people I've served on the board of directors who we started out as colleagues and became pretty good friends. Scott Goldstein, Keith Strasner, Phil Hutchison, and Doug Whitehead. I've always thought of Doug as the brother I never had. Better looking, better speaker, better athlete, so these things happen. Some other people I need to thank too. I need to thank Dr. Carter Ward, who set a shining example of how this is supposed to happen, how it's supposed to work. I want to thank Melissa Randall. If you ever want to see an example of a servant leader, this is the person. I want to thank Kelly Francis on behalf of all the staff at MSBA for the work that goes into putting these conferences together. I'd like to, if you take it, I'd like to give Kelly and her team a round of applause right now. Now, I'm one of those people that thinks that school board is a contact sport. It's a team game. I may be speaking, but there's a team of 4 people that I have the luxury, the privilege to work with that are not just colleagues, they're friends. Doug, who is our past president, Mona, who is our now past president, and she gets to keep the crown, because if I give it to the grandkids, they'll tear it apart. I want to thank Jan Mees for being part of the team. She was elected yesterday in the delegate assembly. And I want to thank Mike Pratt. This should be a really interesting group. And I promise you, if they get out of line, I will pun them into submission. Let me talk a little bit about myself, which I really don't like to do, contrary to what Mona will tell you. A little bit about what I believe, what kind of shapes what I think leadership is, what I've learned, and what I think is important. I will spare you all the stories about being an Iowa farm boy. They've heard all of them. I grew up in a small farm, went to a public school, had the opportunity for 3 small towns to consolidate, which is like nothing I'd ever seen now that I look back on it. We got a new high school in the middle of a soybean field. It just happened to be near my house, so I got to walk to school, never got to drive. But I graduated from Tri-Center Community High School. For those of you in St. Louis that wanted to know where I went to school. Went to Iowa State University and studied computer science. Had the great luxury of getting one of the first degrees in the country. I love problem solving, I love crossword puzzles. It worked extremely well. Do we have another Iowa State person here? Okay, give that woman a free dinner. Went to work in St. Louis. The game plan was to work there for about 10 years, go back to Iowa State, get a doctorate, teach, get to watch sports all the time, have a great time. Met the love of my life, met Martha. And really never had a reason to leave. So we raised 5 kids. They all went through the Melville school system, had great opportunities, and as you can guess, Martha and I were extremely involved parents. Sometimes they had to close the door on us. So that leads me to the question of why did I run for the school board in the first place, which is how this all starts. It's pretty simple. My kids had a great opportunity. They had all kinds of courses, extracurriculars. It was everything you could ask for. And I always felt like it'd be nice to make sure that this continues for everybody else in the community. So that's why I ran. So it's really no surprise that one of the guiding principles in my life is service. I think we're all here for a reason. Some of us are better at some things than others, but there's always the opportunity to help somebody else. So when I got on the school board, I wanted to serve, and being the competitive person that I am, I started to go to every MSBA event I could get to. I started with, I think, the Leadership Summit when we had it out in Columbia, and then made the treks to the conferences and the February excursions up to Jefferson City. The neat part of this was the people I met. People from, it didn't matter if it was a large school or a small or an urban or rural, rich, poor. Everybody was focused on education. It really didn't matter about the differences. And I think the key thing I saw in all these people is character. The ability to look beyond their own self-interest and their ability to look at the bigger picture. I'm reminded of a quote from John Wooden, who's one of my heroes. And he talked about that character is how you behave when nobody's watching. Well, I can tell you that the people I've worked with, I trust implicitly from their behavior. So if you look at all of this, everybody's supposed to have a theme. So I'll give you the 4 key words that are my theme. I believe we're here to serve. I think we have a great opportunity to affect the lives of children. I'm not going to tell you that this is life or death, but it's life affecting. We can change people's lives. I believe in character. I believe in ethics, or else you have chaos. There have to be rules, there have to be behavior. And lastly, there have to be relationships, because none of this works if you don't have a connection. If you can't pick up the phone and talk to somebody and they trust you because they know who you are, it makes a big difference. That I learned in my professional life as a manager. So what have I learned, other than the fact that, quick story, when my son-in-law to be came and asked for my daughter's hand in marriage, it's a great opportunity to really just sit there and just have all kinds of fun. And I didn't do it. Out of respect to my daughter, not necessarily, anyhow. I gave him permission, and I said, I'm going to give you the 2 most important words of advice I can possibly give you as you get married. Practice the words, yes, dear. So having said that, I think one of the great things I've learned is about leadership, because everybody's going to talk about what's your leadership style. Mine's real simple. It's listening. School board, 6/7 of the time, you ought to be listening and talking and contributing. I think management, leadership are the same things. I think leaders put people in a position to succeed. And if people are in a position to succeed, then organizations succeed. So leaders have a lot of hard work finding the right talents for the right place. I think leaders have got to use data to understand what needs to be done. This idea of by the seat of the pants and Ouija boards and things like that, it doesn't work. If you can't measure it, you can't fix it. And clearly, leadership has to demonstrate the qualities you want in people. If you want integrity, if you want ethics, if you want service, if you want commitment, then you've got to demonstrate it yourself. I think relationships are important because they transcend differences. I mean, how else can you explain the fact that people from school districts of 25,000 people are willing to work for the same things that a school district of 300 need? It's character, it's focus. I've also learned that the regional teams, the regional chairs and their teams are the key to our success. Their ability to work with local school boards and develop relationships and be able to get things done is key to us. It's I think, the linchpin. And lastly, I've learned, even when volunteers don't want to be thanked, you thank them. You thank them for their service. You thank them for their presence. Whether they want to be acknowledged or not, you find a way to recognize them. So what do I think is important? This is where I'm supposed to give out the 4 great things that will change the earth and make us a better organization. Well, I'm not going to get quite that draconian, but I'll tell you that the first thing that I think is important to us is advocacy for public schools. Now, we've heard a lot this weekend already about funding. We've heard all kinds of problems about the legislature, but we've also talked about the relationship we have with DESE, with the Superintendent's Association, with the Teachers Association, with the PTA, and certainly with the state school board. But I want to talk about a few different things. For advocacy, we took a good step yesterday in the Delegate Assembly to streamline how we're going to put our legislative direction together. We deal with 3 different documents. We're going to use the vision, and we're going to use our legislative ideas and planks and come up with a document that's, in my terms, agile. We can react much more quickly, and we can use that to drive legislation and suggestions as necessary. I think we're going to be more of a player than a spectator. We've done a great job with social media. Anyone that's tried to run a local tax levy or a bond issue or even an election campaign, the power of social media is amazing. But there's a responsibility with that to be able to make sure the facts are out there, the truth is out there, and you continually can go out and combat that with truth and fact, not debate. As my 91-year-old father says, he thinks of looks like Facebook, looks like the party line we used to have on the farm. Based on what the ring was, you know which one to pick up and know, well, Mrs. Deagle is having trouble with her husband again, so we better listen. This kind of stuff. That's really, if social media, if Facebook isn't used correctly, that's exactly what it is. It's gossip. So the responsibility is to put facts out, not commentary. Support for the regional chairs, I think, is paramount. And I think we need to think about expanding the local committees with more volunteers. Personal experience, in Region 7, we have 40 school districts. We have an REC team of 5 or 6 people. Physically, you can't do it. You cannot take the time to talk with board presidents and representatives and just visit them once in a while. We have people that are interested in being volunteers. Let them. You expand it to 7, 8, 9, whatever it takes to let them be involved. Let them learn. Find the next generation of leaders. And any discussion of advocacy has to start and end with early childhood. If I have one thing on this list, it's early childhood. If I could only do one thing, that's where I do it. The fact that I have an 8-year-old, 5-year-old, and a 3-month-old grandchild have nothing to do with that. Second thing I think is important is to improve the local presence of school boards. We talk a lot about funding issues and legislative issues. Local boards have a great opportunity to shape that. Because if we don't like the people making the decisions, let's get different people. I know that's almost impossible in some precincts, the way they're organized, but you got to try. We have districts that have phenomenal relationships with their representatives. One of the great things about having Mike Pratt as an officer, his school board is exemplary in how they've done things with their local representatives and what they can do in Jefferson City. This is important because if you don't go to the public sessions and ask the questions about funding the formula and cutting revenue and what are you doing locally to help us? How can you hold them accountable if you don't ask them the question? And if you don't communicate to them the value of service, ethics, and character, how can you expect them to do that? I think we have to continue to improve our education and our ways to equip local boards to do that. The third thing is leadership development. We know that good leaders are hard to find, but leadership can be taught, can be learned. It's a skill. I think it was Friday, the Carter Ward Institute had a first session for board presidents. And just using the agenda, it was amazing the level of discussion that came out of best practices and problems and issues. And the exchange between, I think it was about 30 board presidents, was amazing. If we can continue to do that and scale that up, the more opportunity we have to kind of hobnob as fellow wizards and pick each other's brains, the better, I think the further we go. We've also got to continue to look at our education, CBM, advanced and distinguished, all of that. We've got to continue to give school board members more information to cope with a more complex world that we deal with. And we've got to make sure that not only do we reach them, but we can reach out to people that want to serve on school boards. Because if we can give them a better idea of what they get into, it sure cuts down on that first year lead time to bring them on board. The other thing, I think there's two other things we need to do as part of education. We have a growing number of contrarians out there, and I'm going to define those as people that think children are an expense, not an investment. I've seen that firsthand on people in my local board, and it's not pretty. We've had conversations the last couple of days about there are people that don't believe in public education. It's real. So we have an obligation to continue to put that kind of information and skills out. And finally, I'm going to call this skepticism. I think we have to equip boards with the confidence to continue to do their governance job and ask, what are we doing as a district? I'm not going to wire chief and I'm not going to micromanage how it's being done, but we need to make sure we're following process and policy and we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Because you can look in the news and know that they're well-meaning, good districts that it happens to. It's diligence. Finally, continuous improvement. If you can't measure it, you can't fix it. I know we do this. We're doing this as a board. We continue to try and look at the processes and the importance of what we do. I think we have an obligation to take what we've learned and give it to the local boards as best we can so that you can adopt it. Everybody's got a different set of problems, but maybe we can give you some ideas and some techniques on what to do. So having said all that, I'm going to tell you I think this is an exciting time to be a school board member, and it's an exciting time to be a member, an officer, and serve you. Now, with all the problems and all the situations I've talked about, that's probably seems like a rather strange comment. But in the 7 years I've had a chance to serve on the board, meet all of you, serve as an officer, I look at the level of commitment and leadership I see out of the board, local boards, the regional meetings I go to, the people that do the presentations. I have never seen this level of leadership and skill in all this time. So I have no reason to think it can't help but get better. Our challenge is our collective challenge, is to focus the leadership and energy that we have to solve those problems and move forward. Now, I have a homework assignment for you. I cleverly put together, I have my own email address at MSBA. It's cleverly called MSBA President at msbanet.org. I'm interested in what you think of what you heard at this conference, anything in general, what you think. If I can't answer it, I'll figure out how to get you an answer. If I get 400 emails, you may get a weekly list of here's what we heard. But I'd like to open it up, and I think social media is important. I want to use it. So in closing, thank you for being here. I look forward to the challenge of serving you, and thank you very much for being here.